Hey, how's it going guys? Kris here, and welcome to another Battlefield 5 weapon guide. Today we're going to be moving over to the Recon class to take a good look at the first bolt-action rifle available in multiplayer, the Lee Enfield No.4 MK I. A gun with quite a few prominent advantages and disadvantages that are going to give it some very different characteristics to a few of the other similar rifles in the same class. By the time the Second World War kicked off, Lee Enfield rifles had been around for quite some time. They'd been in the hands of the British Army for about 44 years already, with earlier models being used in lots of other conflicts, such as the Great War, as we saw in Battlefield 1. It was a bolt-action rifle featuring a generous 10-round internal box magazine, holding 303 British cartridges, which could be fed into said magazine by loading two 5-round stripper clips, or just by shoving a few bullets into it manually from the top side of the gun's receiver. There's a few good reasons why the Lee Enfields were used over such a long period of time, and saw action in many battles. They did what they were designed to do, and they did it pretty well. British soldiers could keep on firing with their larger magazines, doubling the typical Mauser 98 design, and they could do so fairly accurately too, at a pretty fast pace. The short magazine Lee Enfields, or the SMLEs, were very common prior to World War II, with the Mark III variants being widely used during the Great War. But as time went on, a renewed Lee Enfield model would later come into the scene, in the form of the rifle No.4 MK I. Yep, the very one we get to use in Battlefield 5. These guns were made for trials in the 1930s, and as the demand for them grew, this led to them being officially adopted for service in 1941, when mass production began. Just like the older SMLE Mark III, the No.4 was a reliable weapon that performed well, seeing widespread use in multiple theatres of war. It had a number of improvements, and was even kitted out with a new spike bayonet named the Pig Sticker by troops, designed especially for that model. Although the Lee Enfields were typically manufactured in several different factories around the UK, quite a few were also made overseas in Canada and in the US, with supplies in Britain running short as the war went on. Even as the war came to a close, production of Lee Enfield rifles would continue for many years after, with newer, improved versions being designed. And it's estimated that over 17 million units have been created over the years, making the Lee Enfield one of the most successful bolt-action rifles of all time. So anyway, time for the stats. The Lee Enfield's actually a pretty consistent weapon for dealing damage, as although its rounds don't exactly punish people, it's pretty easy to estimate how much damage is going to be inflicted when they land. The Lee Enfield deals a maximum damage of 60 up to the range of 20 meters, and then it's going to decline very gradually from here, down to 55 at 60 meters and beyond. So basically, there's only a 5 damage difference between its maximum and minimum values, meaning its power's not really going to change massively over distance. These damage figures are generally pretty low as far as the single-shot recon weapons go, as it only deals a little bit more than the Krag and less than all the other base game bolt-action rifles. With that said, the Lee Enfield is going to kill an enemy with full health in 2 bullets pretty effectively over any range, and the smaller amount of damage dealt to legs and lower arms still isn't quite enough to reduce it to a 3-bullet kill. The damage might be a tad on the lower side, but if you plant one of those shots into your opponent's head, then it's going to be lights out for that guy, with damage values exceeding 100, down to that 2.2 times multiplier being applied. One of the big differentiating factors to boost the Lee Enfield's effectiveness comes down to how fast you can fire off multiple rounds to deliver 2-hit kills. Having a base fire rate of 72 RPM gives the weapon an edge when compared to a lot of the others, potentially being capable of killing enemies quicker when landing body shots, and making it a bit more forgiving if you miss a bullet or two, being able to get right back on target and fire off more follow-up shots at a quicker pace than average. 72 RPM is the fastest cycle speed of all the base game bolt actions, and this can be improved even more by applying the machined bolt specialization, boosting that rate of fire up to 84 RPM. This extra speed is going to give you the advantage in a lot of gunfights, and although the gun is less likely to kill an already weakened enemy with 1 round, due to its weaker damage output, that rapid fire rate can often help to make up for it, allowing the Lee Enfield to kill quite quickly and reliably in general play. So accuracy plays a pretty big part of doing well with the recon guns, because in a lot of cases, hitting or missing your target can often be the difference between life and death. When it comes to the Lee Enfield, the gun's vertical recoil value of 2.5 is fairly low when compared to some of the other bolt-action rifles, being on par with the Krag, so it's not going to jolt upwards too much after every trigger pull, giving you a clearer view of your target in between shots. Horizontal recoil is set at the standard value of 0.1, which is kind of the same for the others too. Not that recoil really plays a massive role in a bolt-action rifle's performance, as you're usually going to need to unscope to cycle the bolt anyway after every shot, which sorta makes these recoil values less relevant in most situations. Something that does play a big role in a bolt-action rifle's usability though, especially at longer ranges, is the speed in which your bullets are going to travel through the air. As the lower the muzzle velocity, the more you're going to have to lead a moving target by shooting in front of them. And unfortunately for the Lee Enfield, it's got one of the lowest bullet speed of the bolt-action rifles, having a muzzle velocity of just 500 meters per second, which is actually a bit crap for longer ranged engagements. Of course, if you're counter-sniping and need to land a headshot on an unsuspecting enemy in the distance who's standing still, then this isn't going to be too much of a problem. The same goes for closer to medium range fights, where a slower bullet speed shouldn't really make it too much harder to use. Though this does mean that it might seem a bit trickier to hit moving opponents further away beyond those mid-ranges. So for this reason, it might not exactly be the best choice to equip if you struggle to land shots on enemies running around far away. The Lee Enfield might have a lower than average bullet speed, often making it a bit harder to land shots accurately over range, though it is capable of holding more bullets to make up for it, which should help to compensate for any missed shots due to the gun's ease of use. You're going to be able to hold up to 10 rounds at a time, which is double the likes of the Kar 98 and the Gewehr M95, having the highest ammo capacity of all the base game bolt action rifles. And because the gun shoots so fast, this goes hand in hand with its ability to put multiple players down in quick succession, having enough bullets to keep you going while you do. As far as those reloads go, there's a hell of a lot of different factors that come into play, because typically the Lee Enfield's going to take between 3 to 6.28 seconds to reload 1 to 9 bullets, using a combination of a clip and individual rounds. For a full reload using 2 5-round stripper clips, it'll take about 5.64 seconds, which isn't really all that bad, considering you'll be reloading twice as many cartridges than most of the other rifles. However, slapping some mid to long ranged optics on the gun is basically going to obstruct the top side of the receiver, rendering stripper clips completely useless. So now you'll have to manually slot in all of your bullets individually, increasing the time it takes to reload. So this means that both tactical and empty reloads are going to take between 3 to 7.5 seconds, should you have a scope equipped, penalising you for using the gun for longer ranged battles. Thankfully, there is a specialization that cuts down these reload times by 15%, which should definitely help you out between fights, especially if you're using a scope. As if you were to apply the fast reload specialization, it'd now take a maximum of 6.38 seconds to load up to 10 cartridges, making those reloads a little bit less troublesome. So moving on to the specializations now, the first two choices you'll be met with are quick aim and quick reload, both of which are pretty good options for the Lee Enfield. Because the rifle holds quite a lot of bullets, it can take a bit longer than normal to fill that magazine back up, especially if you've got a scope equipped, which disallows the use of clips. For this reason, I normally prefer to choose the quick reload spec, helping to cut down that vulnerability time in between fights. Though the quick aim is still a fine enough choice to use too, which might complement the gun's nippy rate of fire, allowing you to get back on target a fraction of a second quicker. So either of these options are definitely worth considering. The middle section of the tree has two routes that affect the gun in different ways. The left side lets you be a bit more manoeuvrable, favouring players who like to strafe around by increasing movement speed in ADS, along with reducing spread whilst aiming. Whereas the right side boosts the fire rate even more, lets you shoot sooner after sprinting, and switch weapons quicker too. I like to take full advantage of the gun's ability to cycle the bolt rapidly, reducing kill times and making the Lee Enfield as aggressive as it can possibly be, which is why I prefer to pick specializations on the right side of this section. Last of all is the bayonet and variable zero-in specs, both of which I rarely even bother to use. The variable zero-in might help in longer ranged engagements, accounting for bullet drop, though I'd rather just aim slightly higher instead to accommodate, which is just as good as zero-in in most cases. The bayonet is probably a more ideal choice for me, as it can be effective at killing in CQC if you get caught out, though the main reason I'd opt for it is just for that sudden rush of speed you gain once you activate it, which can help you get out of enemy sightlines and retreat easier in game modes like Breakthrough. So anyway, in conclusion, the Lee Enfield No.4 is one of the more aggressive bolt action rifles in the game that might prove to be a better choice for offensive play at earlier distances. That speedy rate of fire goes really well with its larger ammo capacity, allowing you to keep the shots flying and take on multiple players one by one. And despite dealing a fairly low amount of damage across the board, this speed still allows you to kill in 2 shots pretty quickly nevertheless, being able to deliver rapid follow-up shots effectively, which is also going to help you out whenever a bullet strays off target too. Though unfortunately for the Lee Enfield, it can sometimes seem like a pretty tricky gun to use, especially against players far into the distance who are moving around. And this is all down to it having a low muzzle velocity, which really isn't ideal for long-range sniping. It might be fine for planting headshots on stationary targets, but if someone's strafing around, perhaps another Recon trying to line their sights up on you, then this lower bullet speed might pose to be more of a problem. This definitely lowers the gun's effectiveness over long distances, and although it's not entirely unusable, it'll often seem a bit harder to land shots on target the further away your opponent is. So for this reason, the Lee Enfield might often seem like a better bolt-action rifle to use for medium ranges, being easier to use here with factors that complement aggressive play more so than others. Overall, the damage might be on the lower side, equating to more 2-bullet kills when going for body shots, but the rapid cycling and high ammo capacity can often make up for it, allowing the Lee Enfield to potentially kill faster than other similar guns, and perhaps be a more ideal choice for offensive tactics when pushing forwards alongside your squad. So that's it for another Battlefield 5 weapon guide, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned a thing or two. Give me a like if you did, and subscribe to see loads more Battlefield content right here on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in that next episode.